In the 1990s, a woman in southern England earned a reputation as one of Britain's most manipulative and dangerous female killers. Her name was Dena Thompson, but the press would soon call her the Black Widow of Sussex. Thompson's life was marked by deception. She moved quickly from one relationship to another, charming men, gaining their trust, and then draining their finances. Loans, benefits, and insurance schemes left a trail of victims in her wake. But money was not her only weapon. When her partners became inconvenient, Thompson turned to poison. In 1994, she began a relationship with Julian Webb, a computer consultant from Surrey. 6 years later, he was found dead in his home. At first, his death was written off as natural causes, but investigators later exhumed his body, discovering lethal levels of antidepressants in his system. It was no accident. It was murder. Julian Webb was not her only victim. Thompson's second husband, Richard, narrowly survived after eating a curry she had laced with crushed pills. He later testified that he believed she was trying to kill him. His account, combined with her history of fraud, painted a picture of a woman who used relationships as traps. In 2003, Dena Thompson stood trial at the Old Bailey. Jurors heard how she exploited men, manipulated finances, and plotted murders with cold calculation. The case of Julian Webb was the turning point. The evidence of poisoning was clear, and her pattern of behavior undeniable. Thompson was convicted of murder, attempted murder, and multiple fraud offenses. She was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years before parole. The Black Widow case shocked Britain. It revealed how trust, love, and intimacy could be turned into weapons, used to control, to steal, and to kill. Dena Thompson's story stands as one of betrayal and calculation, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who hide in plain sight. In 1983, a Texas grandmother staged a fishing trip that never happened. The disappearance of her husband, Jimmy Don Beets, would lead investigators to one of the most chilling discoveries in American true crime. Betty Lou Beets was born into poverty in 1937 and endured a childhood marked by illness and abuse. By 15, she was married, and over the next 3 decades, she cycled through 5 husbands. Violence and instability followed her from one relationship to the next. Her 5th marriage to retired firefighter Jimmy Don Beets seemed like a chance at stability. But on August 6, 1983, she reported him missing, telling authorities he had vanished while fishing at Lake Athens. His boat was found drifting, carefully staged to look like an accident. Betty Lou Beets had lived a turbulent life marked by abuse, broken marriages, and violence. By the time she was in her 40s, she'd been married 5 times, and nearly every husband became a victim of her rage. Her second husband, Billy Lane, survived when she shot him in the back in 1970. After they remarried, she tried to shoot him again. Her third husband, Ronnie Threlkeld, endured her violent threats, including a gun pulled on him during fights. But not all of Betty's partners survived. In 1981, her 4th husband, Doyle Wayne Barker, disappeared. 4 years later, his body was found buried beneath her garage floor. He had been shot dead. Then came Jimmy Don Beets. Married in 1982, he was retired, with both a firefighter's pension and life insurance. Within a year, he vanished. When investigators dug up Betty's yard in 1985, they discovered Jimmy Don's body buried in a flower bed, and Doyle Barker's remains hidden nearby. Her children later testified that Betty asked them to help cover up the crime. Prosecutors argued her motive was money, pointing to the staged fishing accident and her attempts to collect benefits. In 1985, she was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. For 15 years she appealed, with supporters arguing she was herself a victim of lifelong abuse. But the courts rejected clemency. On February 24, 2000, at the age of 62, Betty Lou Beets was executed by lethal injection. She was the second woman executed in Texas since the Civil War. Betty Lou Beets remains one of the clearest examples of a Black Widow killer, a woman whose pattern of violence began with attempts on her husband's lives and ended with 2 buried in her own yard. In the mid-19th century, Victorian England was plagued by poverty, disease, and hidden dangers. Among the most chilling was Mary Ann Cotton, a woman remembered as Britain's first female serial killer. Born in 1832 in County Durham, Mary Ann grew up in a poor mining family. She married young, had children, and outwardly lived the life of a dutiful wife and mother. But behind closed doors, her family members began dying in disturbing numbers, all from sudden stomach illnesses. Her first husband, William Mowbray, died after a mysterious illness, along with several of their children. Mary Ann collected the life insurance. Soon after, her second husband, George Ward, suffered the same fate. Then came James Robinson, a shipwright who lost his mother and children while Mary Ann cared for them. When he refused to take out more insurance policies, she left him. By the time she married Frederick Cotton in 1870, a pattern had emerged. Husbands, lovers, stepchildren, even her own children, those closest to Mary Ann, fell ill and died, while she collected the payouts. Investigators now believe she may have poisoned as many as 21 people over 2 decades. Her method was simple and effective. Arsenic, easily obtained in Victorian households, left victims writhing with stomach pain that doctors mistook for natural disease. The chain of death continued until 1872, when her young stepson, Charles Edward Cotton, died suddenly. Mary Ann spoke of his burial and life insurance too quickly, raising suspicion. An autopsy revealed arsenic in his body. Soon, other bodies were exhumed, with the same results. In 1873, Mary Ann Cotton stood trial for murder. Despite her protests, the evidence was overwhelming. She was found guilty of killing Charles and sentenced to hang. On March 24th of that year, she was executed at Durham Jail. The drop was too short, and she died slowly by strangulation. Mary Ann Cotton's crimes shocked Victorian society, exposing the silent danger of domestic poisoning and the flaws in early death certification. She left behind a legacy of fear, immortalized in nursery rhymes and folklore. To this day, she remains a symbol of how trust and domestic life can be twisted into something deadly. In North Carolina, a woman once known as a devoted wife, mother, and churchgoer would become infamous as one of America's most chilling poisoners. Her name was Blanche Taylor Moore, and she earned the nickname the Black Widow. Born in 1933, Blanche's early life was shaped by poverty and an abusive father. As an adult, she developed a pattern that left a trail of sickness and death in her wake. Her husbands, boyfriends, and even her own father all suffered sudden and mysterious illnesses, marked by nausea, organ failure, and what doctors at the time believed were natural causes. In reality, Blanche was slowly poisoning them with arsenic. Her first husband, James Taylor, died in 1973 at just 45 years old. Years later, his body was exhumed, and tests revealed lethal levels of arsenic. In 1986, her boyfriend Raymond Reed died in similar fashion. He, too, would later be shown to have been poisoned. Even her father, Parker Kaiser, was suspected to have been an earlier victim. But Blanche's downfall came in 1989, when she married Reverend Dwight Moore. Just weeks after the wedding, Dwight collapsed with a violent illness. Doctors discovered arsenic levels in his body 10 times the lethal dose. Unlike her earlier victims, he survived long enough for investigators to uncover the truth. Exhumations linked Blanche to multiple deaths, and prosecutors painted her as a manipulative killer who used food as her weapon. In 1990, she was convicted of attempting to murder Dwight Moore and sentenced to death. Today, Blanche Taylor Moore remains on death row in North Carolina. She is the oldest woman awaiting execution in the United States. Her story is a haunting reminder of how trust can be twisted into a weapon, and how ordinary meals became instruments of death in the hands of the Black Widow of North Carolina. In March 1996, Ireland was shaken by a brutal crime inside a country pub. Tom Nevin, the respected owner of Jack White's Inn in County Wicklow, was gunned down with a shotgun blast as he sat at his kitchen table. The house appeared ransacked. Money was missing, and at first it looked like a violent burglary. But the truth was far darker. Suspicion quickly fell on Tom's wife, Catherine Nevin. Outwardly, she was a successful businesswoman, but behind the scenes she had been plotting his death for years. Witnesses later came forward to say Catherine had tried to hire them to kill her husband, offering money and favors in exchange for murder. These attempts stretched back nearly a decade, building a pattern of premeditation. The staged burglary raised more questions than answers. Valuables had been left untouched, and Catherine's story about that night changed under police questioning. Investigators were convinced she hadn't just lost a husband, she had orchestrated his death. In 2000, Catherine Nevin went on trial for murder and conspiracy to murder. The courtroom heard shocking testimony from multiple men who claimed she had approached them with offers to kill Tom Nevin. Combined with the evidence of the staged break-in, the case revealed a chilling portrait of manipulation and greed. The jury found Catherine guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison for murder, plus additional terms for solicitation. The press dubbed her Ireland's Black Widow, a woman who used charm and deceit as weapons, and who ultimately destroyed the man closest to her. Catherine Nevin spent nearly 2 decades behind bars, never admitting guilt. In 2016, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor and granted compassionate release. 2 years later, she died at the age of 67, still insisting she was innocent. Her case remains one of Ireland's most notorious true crime stories, a tale of betrayal, greed, and the deadly lengths one woman went to in pursuit of control.